And we are live.
Okay. Call to order the this May 15th PACAB work session. I don't have a list of things to do, but we'll call a roll.
We don't typically call roll at work sessions.
I know, we don't typically pledge allegiance to the flag either.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that this time.
I can do a visual inspection and say that you have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Visual inspection.
Okay. You are going to take notes?
We're taking notes.
Thank you. Okay, so from memory, we have a work session scheduled from memory. Citizen comments. We have a few in our audience today, thank you. We have on our list, our schedule, John, we didn't do the pledge, but I would say that decorum would ask you to remove your hat. So, thank you, appreciate it. I wear one most of the time too. Our schedule lays out some regular meetings where we do a lot of things for the pork and tariffs and things like that, but our work sessions tend to go into other things that are part of the mission of PACAB, and that mission statement is found in city code, and it's been debated back and forth over time, but it's fairly broad. It includes things to help the economy of the state of the city of Seward, and also the well-being of the citizenship. And a couple of those things that we've determined over time and has been agreed to by council is alternative energy, finding sources that would be either lowering costs or improving the lifestyle of residents of the city. Obviously that includes solar, wind, hydro, but the heat pumps as well. We've talked in the past in this group about heat pump rebates and how the city electric department could be brought into some sort of action with that. It also includes things like hydro. Hydro's been talked about for a number of years. If you have been to city council meetings, Resident Tim McDonald has talked quite a bit about potential hydropower, and it's here, it's real. It doesn't get moved forward unless somebody talks about it. And there are groups in the Central Peninsula that are very active in this. Solarized, the Kenai is one, I think. I can't think of all the names of them. But it kind of leaves a void here in Seward without a focal point. My feeling has been I've wanted to participate in this kind of activity for a long time. And when Chair Laura Snyder was here, we had a 3-member committee that met irregularly. And as I now understand, was probably didn't comply with the Open Meetings Act. What you got in front of you was something that the clerk and I spent some time with since our last regular meeting, and as it turns out, I don't understand how government works. I don't.
Chair Joff, I'd be happy to introduce this laydown if you'd like me to.
Please do.
Give a little speech here. So I missed the last meeting. I was on annual leave, but I've been trying to bring myself up to speed on these potential committees, and I've learned a few of the finer points along the way, speaking with Lynn Keneally, our local government specialist. And there's a subtle but important difference between, if 3 PACAB members, 2 or 3 PACAB members want to meet up at the coffee house and discuss whatever, I mean, that's fine. But if you give it the official designation of a committee, that elevates it to being compliant with the Open Meetings Act, even if it's just 2 or 3 board members. So you just need to be careful in the direction you want to head in. If you want to make official committees, we'll pass that on to council, and it'll be relatively the same status as like the Heat Loop Ad Hoc Committee. And we notice your meetings in the calendar and that sort of thing. The other option, if you wanted it to be less formal, would be individual board members could do their own private research, talk to whoever, and then present their findings in September when you reconvene. So there's some options out there. It's kind of a tricky gray area that you're in with the small committees.
I spent some time thinking about this, Chris, on the way in, since we've talked last time as well, and I appreciate your explanation, and it's exactly what we talked about. And it's what's written. I don't argue with what's written. Again, I don't understand how 2 or 3 city council members can meet and talk about something, or 3 or 4 legislators in Juneau can meet and talk about something. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's a work session. Phil?
Yeah, I guess, so what if it was a community group and we just invited PACAB to participate in our meetings? I mean, does that put us in a different path versus PACAB formally creating this committee? And
If it was a committee outside of the city, I don't think we would care, you know, for Open
Right.
Meetings Act. You
so
could
that could be a different avenue.
because this is pertaining to a governmental body.
I think actually what we're gonna, I suspect that this is a short meeting because I don't think we're going to really be able to appoint any kind of a committee. We don't want to violate the rules, but to move this forward, I am willing to put some of my time this summer towards meeting with anybody that wants to meet. And now, if someone were to call me, if 3 people call me, is that a violation of our rules?
I don't believe so.
Just as long as we don't call it a committee.
But even if you call 2 people and then they call 2 people, that's a no-no too.
Well, that's a daisy chain.
The serial meeting thing, but that's a.
So I'm just really confused how this works. I mean, we have a fine advisory board that can offer something to the city, and granted, we're gonna go on hiatus, and I think everybody's gonna hopefully enjoy the summer. I know I've got a ton of things to do, but I don't think that this should linger. I mean, Phil and I have been talking about this together, and I think Ben has for 5 or 6 years.
So, you know, when we had that group a while back, Chamber of Commerce sort of, you know, was steered it basically, where we had our energy group. And so the Chamber basically was sort of the babysitter of that group. And then we could certainly, you know, and that process worked great. I mean, we had some wonderful discussions and stuff with folks.
Was that just missed in an interim of change of
Oh, they had
directors?
some money that was, you know, that they could allocate to create this group and run it for a year, and that whatever grant that funds were, it was some Exxon recovery funds or something that they got to use for. But, I mean, so that structure of just letting like the chamber or somebody sort of manage this outside committee or group and with PACABs.
I think the distinction is if we form the group and we direct them, then that's when this all, if there's a group of people that are good citizens that are bringing information to PACAB independently from our direction, even if we participate, is that correct?
You know, getting back to like the sort of individual board member doing research, I mean, you would be welcome to meet with experts in the field, like you could meet with Phil and talk, or meet with Phil.
Right. I think as long as it's not at the direction or the PACAB's not creating that, but was it to the housing committee and the energy committee that we were.
Those were the 2
right?
topics, correct.
Right.
And they both have the same issue with how they're managed. I think frankly, there are other agencies that are working on the housing to a great degree. Actually, if you talk to different people, there are a lot of people out there who are working on housing in different regards. You know, when Jason was with, what the agency you came from, it was not planning and zoning, what is the city agent?
Community development?
Community development. And they're still involved with that, and I talked to a number of people who are aware of the problems. So I'm less concerned about trying to drive forward, although I will help on the housing than I am on what we can do about, I'm too much of a fossil fuel guy to say decarbonize, but that's really what I mean. Find alternative sources for our heat.
Yeah, I did have somebody suggest we change it to either clean energy or renewable energy.
Okay. No matter what, I would think when we come back in the fall, that we can come back with at every meeting, an agenda item to talk about this. And that will be within the rules. We can bring our research to anybody. John's got, a good hold on some of the specialty items, and Ben as well. We can bring those to the group and flesh them out and still maintain time for things Tony's going to need with our review. You're going to do any tariffs this year? Yep.
You're planning on it, yes.
That'll take some time. And the important things that PACAB offers the city council that they can then digest easily. But short of that, I'm easy to find in the phone. Well, there is no phone book. I'm not too hard to find. My listing is on the city website, and if you want my phone number, I will be happy to help or join discussions. I get a ton of information about. I'm sure Ben does too. Well, maybe John, all of us. Becky is interested, but in industrial sources like fusion. I'm all about fusion. I love the idea. I hope I live to see it commercialized. But it's making big news these days. For something this small, it's making big news. And there are a lot of other things on the horizon. Wind energy, tidal energy in the Cook Inlet. They're both being heavily studied by the big boys. So I think there's no reason for Seward to think that they can't be part of it. I think there are some obvious things. I mean, the nuke in Seward is probably dead on arrival. But even the mini nuke that I hope our company's involved with at Isleson, that's not feasible in Seward. It's just not. Other than that, I'm open to ideas and suggestions. I mean, I did think we had a work session. I thought we could probably go forward a little bit with the committee assignments, but I've learned that's not something we can do.
Well, I'm not trying to say that you can't have these committees, but it's just going to have to be made official, go through council, and we need a clear outline of what the committees would be focused on, like scope of work. And
well, we can't really do that from a work session anyway.
well, we could compile, enough notes and information to present it to council.
Well, let me ask you, of the four of us that are here, how many are interested in participating in something like this?
I am.
And I know somebody else that's actually a lot more qualified than me.
Okay, well, it doesn't, the committee would be PACAB members, but it could be also non-PACAB members?
It could be, that would be like the heat loop committee. It's a mixture. I know your original intention was for 3 PACAB members only, like a subcommittee of PACAB.
For the heat loop?
No, for
correct.
housing or alternative.
No, I like the idea of a broader committee.
I do too. The person that I have that's interested
Yeah, and we
is-
could draft people like Phil.
Yeah, 2
Huh?
people.
You're here. Give him a nudge.
Absolutely.
So, how do we present that to council, Chris? I mean,
Work your magic.
Well, we'd have to advertise the committee, vacancies, like with the electric ad hoc committee, and then people would submit applications.
stay away from the electric.
They'd submit applications for council to review to be appointed to the committee. I mean, it's a process.
Well, again, I'm a little confused, the process. Can we make a motion at this meeting, or do we just give you in the minutes some names?
Names of PACAB board members?
Well,
or-
we've got, I'm willing to participate. Becky, I don't know, Ben didn't raise his hand, but he could get dragged into it. He'd be one of them anyway. And John. And there's no reason that when if we do get a committee formed, that committee can't invite people, residents and experts, et cetera.
As guest speakers or as committee members?
No, as guest speakers, participants in discussions. Because I would suspect that committee's meetings would be fairly casual. They just have to have, they would have to have minutes. Would the minutes need to be kept by the clerk?
Minutes are not required for committees.
Just a report. I would, if I were a council member, I'd have trouble appointing a committee that didn't give me reports. Let's try it. Can we ask the council to create a committee for alternative energy sources?
And I'd like to be able to see them to advertise the vacancies and get other people out
Okay.
of the community, because I know somebody that
Well,
is in a.
ask them to appoint a five or seven member committee. I would think 5 is a reasonable number. Is there any reason to worry about a tie vote for a committee? Like for 6 people? I mean, that wouldn't,
They typically wouldn't be voting on anything.
right, so a 5 or 6 member committee, I would think.
And how many of those members would be PACAB board members that would already be built into this? Do we know at this point?
Well, right now, it's the half. 3 out of 6.
Is that Bruce, John, and Becky that wanted to be on the
Yes.
Alternative Energy Committee?
Yes.
Do you have a sunset date in mind, like end of the year, or is it just a summer?
I'd say when PACAB renews, any committee, the committee should offer their reports to PACAB for consolidation into the record, and there'd be a meeting, I would think, at PACAB to receive that report. And I suspect it's going to be a matter of bullet points, ideas, some value analysis for those ideas. So I'm not sure when PACAB renews in September, I think.
Do you mean like the first meeting in September or
Yes,
We would reconvene.
reconvene?
yes. And what this is we never polled PACAB about, honestly, we've never really talked about why PACAB's going on hiatus for quite a long while. I don't mind it, don't get me wrong. I know why everybody's busy in the summer, but we really haven't talked about it for a long time. It's just been assumed. So I think next fall, we probably should talk about it.
What was recently put into city code?
It was?
Yeah. they
June,
brought it
July,
up.
August, it's now in code.
Okay, well,
There goes that discussion.
it's there. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about why it's there.
I mean, can you have work sessions in the summer still? I mean, is there any reason?
Yeah, you could have special sessions.
You could call,
have-
you could call for a special meeting or a
Yeah.
work session.
So if you did have the gang together and people were willing to meet in August or something,
Yeah, if something was really critical that city council needed, PACAB to meet, for instance, that we could call a special session. Okay?
So, Chair Jaffa, so that is the Alternative Energy Committee, proposition. did you want to propose another committee for housing, or did you feel that was?
I would leave it up to the group. I frankly don't.
We identified what other groups, you mentioned community development. I kind of feel like there's a lot of stuff being left out of the housing discussion.
I do too.
A lot of things are being, lack of a better word, just kind of self-serving. There's housing questions that I know people that don't have, that have rooms for rent, they can't find renters, and then yet people are paying exorbitant rents for rooms. It doesn't match up. So, and there's questions that I have that I think a group like this would be good at getting to the bottom of. And that's been identified multiple times as a key issue for economic development, and for sure at the Sea Life Center, that's always we cannot bring people to this town. It's like like what? So I think some of those questions are who is being affected by this the most, and how does that impact the development of this town? I think the seasonal part of it's pretty well understood, but the long-term resident, and then the questions that Jag brought up when they were here, there's room for discussion.
There is, Ben.
It's not framed very well. There's a lot of, it's my opinion anyway.
Has the city got any particular action that they're working on with housing to promote the housing? I know there's the incentives for builders and subdivision, things like that.
Yeah, and really, like, it's not the city, like, we can play roles in it, but we're not supposed to, like, step into the market and kind of take control either. So we feel like we are investing in certain ways and trying to help talk to people and solve problems, and sometimes that's through code revisions in some ways. Like, there were some short-term rental code revisions. That I know that it's been on the commission's agenda to even look at, like, land use, and, like, are there things that we could do to make maybe like the land, like something like lot coverage, or there's certain things that you could do. Can we make things more efficient? Can we make it more accessible? I know planning and zoning has discussed those at certain times, and so I think that's another kind of angle that the city takes. And obviously the developer reimbursement program is something that we are doing to incentivize housing. On Monday at the city council meeting, Michelle French gave a presentation from Rural Cap about a program there, which is actually really exciting, where and this is taking place on the other side of the peninsula. They built like 100 homes this way, but what it is that Rural Cap buys 10 homes or 10 lots, and they have families apply for those homes, and they work. So this will happen here up at the Hilltop Properties in 2025, where they will. Those 10 families have to put in 35 hours a week for that summer. They'll subcontract out obviously things like HVAC, electrician, plumbing, that kind of stuff. But those families have to put in 35 hours per week as a group for labor, and and no one can move in until all the houses are done. But that basically all that labor throughout that summer is their down payment for their home. Wow. And they're given a really good interest rate, and so it enables people that are probably that are in those brackets where it's just really going to be impossible for them to buy like a home. Cause, especially in the Seward's market, it's impossible for I feel like a majority of people. But anyway, they have applicants for that, and then they'll be building that home, and then they get. I think interest rates are also subsidized, so I think the max interest rate they will pay right now is like 4.5% over like 38 years. So it really makes the payments reasonable, and they can actually get grants that will actually pay to lower that rate a little bit based on their income. So we're really excited about this program, and the thing that's nice about it too is that it guarantees that those homes there will be used for year-round citizens and families that are living there. And so we feel like it's it's another opportunity that's been opened up through the development of those homes. I know the fire department is actually reviewing building permits for 4 homes already for those properties. So that we're going to have houses that are built this summer. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where the city is like, has certain levels of involvement in areas that we can do, and we can collaborate in other areas, so.
Who's Rural Cap? Is it a federal program?
Yeah, it's managed through the state, but it is kind of a,
Like a federally funded?
yeah, it's a federally funded like state program. And they do all kinds of housing initiatives. I think they work through like HUD's one of the programs that puts money through there. But they have like 600 employees in the state and 70 communities, and for all kinds of housing issues. So federal housing.
That sort of answers who's doing the outreach. They probably have their own outreach that they are contacting the, I guess you call it the target population.
Yeah, and really why it came here is Casey Warner. She's the one who did a lot of she heard about it over there, and so she contacted them and said, hey, we need this in Seward, and so we got in contact with them, and then they got in contact with Hilltop Properties, and so, but they said that they've had enough applicants here that they would actually like to buy another 10 lots. And so, I mean, the demand here is obviously very, very high for that type of program, which is, I mean, I think it's fantastic.
Would you call that subsidized housing?
No, well, I would say I don't know how they define subsidized housing, so I don't necessarily want to step into that, but I do think it, I don't think the subsidy goes on forever, and so I don't know if you could call that subsidized housing, but it is aided housing. I mean, it's a housing aid to get people into homes. But also too, like they have to work for it, so I don't know if it's like, I mean, that's a pretty significant investment of working 35 hours a week on your home as a family, and so I feel like from one angle you could say, yeah, that's subsidized. From another angle, you're like, well, they're putting a lot of sweat equity to earn that, and you can have actually people volunteer for that. So I mean, there obviously is a subsidy or grant kind of involved in that. So
it sounds like a different program than what we've known as low-income housing.
Yeah, no, it is not that.
The reason I mention that is because I know Seward already has a high percentage.
Right. Yeah, and this is not. And yeah, when compared to like that, like Section 8, this is not that. This is more of a
mortgage subsidized program, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
Still zero down payment, but you're putting in all that time, and
yeah, and
their interest rates are good, and
right. Yeah, so I think it's like, I mean, there is obviously some kind of money that's been put into that you could call a subsidy, I guess, but it's also like a totally different approach where you're not just getting something for free. So
would how easy would it be for a committee through the summer to be able to get data from either community development or from the administration on what programs are already going on, so there's not a duplication of effort?
Well, we don't, I would say that, I mean, as far as that goes, I don't think community development's the right one to go. They're busy enough, they don't need to go do research and see where programs are available. But that's something that committee could do. I think that's what they're tasked with, would be helping to go find that. But I think just if someone on that type of housing committee it'd probably just be good for them to talk to Michelle French and just learn about that more. And you can watch on City Council that she did the presentation. I think it shows up on the YouTube video when she did the presentation, and so that's really easy to watch that way. And you could someone could reach out to her and contact her, because her contact information is on it a bunch, and she could, working in that space, she probably has lots of directions or different aids that she could point anyone interested to. So,
well, that's something, sounds like it could be built on.
Yeah, it probably doesn't need a subcommittee appointment. I think that's something that we can bring research to and back to a PACAB meeting, so.
If we continue individually to bring up, to research, come up with ideas, I think there's an improvement, but it's a statewide, nationwide problem with housing that everyone recognizes. It's kind of a catch-22. You need housing, but you need the workers to build the housing. So then you're talking about camps, but then there's other places that need the same, it's on and on and on. So part of it is how do you dress up your package and make it most attractive?
And I would just say to like, I want to call you Ben, but Board Member Smith, if you'd be like, I'm always happy if someone wants to come talk to me about it. We could get Community Development Director in the room with that too, or have Nicole in that conversation, and we can kind of, I'm happy to have a conversation during the summer about, and take time to do that, and kind of put all the pieces that we all know like together, and find like where there's gaps, and look for, I'm happy to help out in that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I
so.
think, yeah, that sounds like a good strategy there. There's roadblocks to growth, is really what,
It is the roadblock to growth, yeah.
so, yeah, there's plenty of people that are being served by that, the housing here, like, there's plenty of people that can buy houses, but they're not the ones that are necessarily going to grow this community, and that's
Correct.
kind of where I think PACAB's effort can help, so.
Yeah.
It's just, I found every housing discussion we've had here, where we brought Nicole Lawrence or Jag, when we did the prior ones, that was how many years ago now, always been very enlightening, so.
Yeah.
It's a good use of this board. But
Okay, so we would like to, oh, no, we decided that probably not.
yeah, probably not. I think there's enough to bring to the table without having a committee do more. We could probably-
Well, I'm gonna, for one, gonna take a look at the council meetings and the road-capted presentation. I know there's other programs, and Melissa is somebody I think that probably has her finger on the pulse. The Board Member Sutter would have her finger on the pulse of what kind of knocks on the door there are, how many people are really being interested, and how many people are being turned away. The realtors have some of that with the financing people, and in my brief discussion, it wasn't brief, but my discussion with some of the builders, it's logistics. It starts with land, which is expensive, and in some cases hasn't been tremendously available, but there seems to be little trickles of land showing up here and there. There's one against a hillside that I've got a brilliant design for, but I'm too old. I'm not going to do it. And I think there are other little places around town, but the logistics of manpower and training our youth, I mean, this all goes together. Training our youth to where they're interested in hammer and nail jobs. That comes with it. If we don't have the builders, we're not doing it. And they won't, immigrant workforces are so difficult today. It used to be that way. Donald. A lot of people used labor from wherever they could. The railroads were built with immigrant labor, Irish, at least. Okay, other than that, I appreciate everybody showing up, John and Becky, Ben.
Chair Jaffa, if I may.
Yeah.
I have one question about the proposed alternative energy
Yeah.
committee. You mentioned 5 to 7 members. I was wondering about changing it to 3 to 7 members.
Why not?
And that way it would guarantee the committee, even if it's just the 3 PACAB members.
I think it's a great suggestion.
Okay, and so we leave it open to 4 members of the public to join if we get the applications.
And that would be noticed and asked for volunteers. Yep, that would be nice. And then the council can decide of those who they want to select.
And did you have any ideas about how often you want to meet, like once a month?
Yeah, I'd say once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah.
The more regular the schedule, the better.
Well, at least monthly. I mean, we're talking about 3 months, I think. At least once a month. That gives you, if you get together for an hour, hour and a half, or 2, that still gives you quite a bit of time. And with a committee that's loose like that, there can be some telephone time too, between meetings. But I would just want to make sure that council gets a report, or PACAB gets a report that provide to council. I just can't imagine it any other way.
So I'd advise those that haven't watched to watch this last city council meeting and the last P&Z meeting. They did a really good presentation on the, it's upside down, shiny, the port of tomorrow. And that's interesting to watch, and it kind of ties into this because the question was asked what they're doing for energy.
That's the railroad dock?
Mhm.
And we disassembled that thing and scanned it so it's on legislative history because it was presented as a laydown at P&Z.
You did?
Cool, of
Could you
course they
spread it
did,
out?
Yeah.
Could you spread it out?
You've been doing great.
So there's the presentation on YouTube, and then another handout, and then that booklet on legislative history.
On the website?
For the most recent planning and zoning meeting.
Yeah, it was the most recent one, and Christy Terry came and did a presentation, and it was on slideshow. And then I did an interview, and that's on Sacktown. It's like only 42 minutes, but it was with the 3 people that showed up at the...
Okay. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we'll ask the audience for any closing comments. And
Guess one I'd have is, finding an alternative energy source in our neighborhood would be great. And we need to keep looking. But we have so much work to do in terms of electrifying Seward and getting off of oil and the heat pumps and EVs and better efficiency in buildings and city new constructed buildings. You got a lot to cover.
Brad? Late joiner? No?
Well, sure, I'll just open this up. I was just over, I'm the P&Z commissioner now, and I was just visiting with admin and the staff, and there's a lot of properties out in Forest Acres that are just sitting ducks, and they don't have utilities to them. And I know there was an attempted resolution earlier last winter, but it was a no-go because of the cost. And I actually would like to have a chat with Jason and maybe Doug, but just want to let you think about it too, the possibility of just running water out to those lots and allowing them to go ahead and have their septic. So it would cut back on, the initial cost. Because septic out there, I'm talking rural residential area, it's deemed as, it's right along Dick Rapp Road, just south of there. And so they could be allowed to, it could be a special district, maybe just, there's like 27 lots.
Can
Most of
I
them are acreage,
speak to that? Those, a far majority of those lots are deed restricted, and they cannot by deed have septic put in there. That's the major, we looked at exploring that, but that is the major issue, is that a majority of those lots are deed restricted. And so it says you must hook up to city water and sewer out there. And like if there's a way around that, I think it'd be a conversation to have for sure, but that was the major.
Correct, so
Yeah.
that is the conversation, because, you could put a price tag on it of $3.9 million to run sewer and water out there. Sewer, you would have to pump uphill to get into the main sewer line, so, you say that's deed restricted, so can there be
Community
a conversation about that?
sewer system, a little community septic system that serves 10 houses.
That's fairly common in the lower 48
27,
with
yeah.
like trailer parks and stuff. We'll put in a local service.
Run them some
Even
water and
connected.
just have a little group. I mean, would that meet that deed deal?
And that I don't know, because I don't get into deed restrictions, and I do think I don't think it's a bad thing at all to have creative conversations, but that was the roadblock that we ran into, is that the deed for most of them in there, it says these lots must hooked up to sewer city water. I don't know if deed restrictions can be removed.
But the city owned that little septic system, I suppose.
It doesn't
Yeah,
have
and
to
then
be the,
right, and then but then do we there's all kinds of complications that get into those maintenance items and,
So can
We'd be
you,
paying for it.
can that deed be lifted for that particular area?
that I don't know, because we don't, that's not a power that the city has necessarily, I don't think, so.
So who gave us the deed, or you have to talk to the attorney about it, or?
Yeah, I don't,
Because if the city, if we didn't require the developer to do it, and the city isn't going to do it, you know, they choose to, you know, we're developing Hilltop and all these other areas, why we actually have landowners in an area that hasn't been able to do anything with their property, and you think you'd want to put value into that property, because it would be better if you went
Right.
to the city.
Right.
And more housing, so.
yeah, and I think that deed restriction was like, there's certain ways that you can ensure that people do hook up to city water,
Right.
and that was it. And also too, like those property owners just, were all made very, very aware by both the selling agents and the purchasing agents of the condition of those properties, which is why they kind of got this like good deal about it. And it's a really tough situation for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely open to having like, if there's ways that we can,
Or it could be
do
a
that.
condition, once sewer does get in there, then they do have to hook up, but until then, they can at least get going on it.
yeah, those are good conversations to have.
And meanwhile, try to get water down there.
Those are all dry properties right now?
It's
Dry
water,
ground?
it's water and roads, because there's also not roads in most of those lots, so that's also another piece to it, it's not just water. Roads have to be built.
So those are 27 lots, you said? And what, half-acre lots, quarter-acre lots?
They vary.
They're either an acre or a half acre, and I don't know how many people own, actually, one person may own two.
So there's some real commercial value, it'd definitely be worth a conversation. I don't think this is the first time I've heard it, I just wondered why, well, there's tremendous difficulty, and obviously other flashpoints have drawn the attention.
I think they were
And
aware
money.
they were aware of the situation, but they were not aware of the price tag it would cost to get
I
that
think that's
up
probably
there.
true. I think
They
that's
were
probably
quite
true.
surprised.
I know someone. who bought
They were
property.
actually, we've seen the documents and they were quoted how much it is per foot to do those things. Like it was, the realtors did a very good job informing on both sides. And that the city has no plans to put utilities there, all of the above. I mean, this has been a thorough process that we've been working through for like 2 years of working.
But it
through that.
figures into the available land issue
Yep.
in Seward.
For sure, for sure.
So, part of the discussion, it's a good point. Thank you, Rhonda. Anybody else in the audience? All right, so we'll ask administration, Harbor Master.
No comment. Looking forward to see you all in the fall.
Congratulations on your name tag, you're official now.
Okay, all right. Jason, are you good?
Yep.
John, board member?
2 thumbs up.
All right. Becky?
Exciting news, we have an energy auditor that's willing to come to Seward now, so that's good. Because before the one would come clear from Homer, and he wanted to retire, and I know this because he'd stay at my place when he was in town, and his wife would bring their motor home, but, so we do have an energy auditor that is interested in coming to Seward, so if anybody needs that service, there you go.
Very good.
That's good news, and that's a valuable service, I can recommend that. And no other comments, thanks.
I will say that the heat loop has a pretty interesting meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock. The final data collection from the test well will be pulled today, has been pulled actually, and all the participants that are on the team, the City of Seward as the project manager, the National Research Energy Lab, the Your Clean Energy, the Heat Loop Committee itself, and our publicist will be meeting to just talk over where we are, where we're going to go. We are entering into the competition for Phase 2, which means that we have to collect all this data and put a really shiny face on it and present it to the Department of Energy. And out of the 11 original projects I forget, is it 5? Or it's, a fewer number will be selected. But instead of the original $10 million, I think they have almost more than double that amount of money to disperse amongst the recipients. So things that are part of this project that'll be considered will be solar energy, solar energy.
What?
Photovoltaic.
Okay.
Voltaic.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to be part of that, and we'll see how that goes. We hope we can get on to phase 2. Other than that, Dwayne wasn't here. I would like to thank the railroad for a very well-managed job at Trail River. They completed the job, the train's running. The contractor did tremendous, hit all the milestones. Nobody got hurt. Hopefully everybody made money. But that's the kind of project that I think we all like to see. So, other than that, thank you all for coming. Have a nice summer.